We're completely surrounded by products we use every single day without a second thought. But have you ever stopped to wonder about the invisible safety net that makes all that trust possible? Well, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on those hidden rules that are working around the clock to keep us safe. So let's start with something super simple, something you'd find in almost any home. You buy some modeling clay for your kids, and you just assume it's safe, right? You trust that they can squish it and shape it for hours, and everything will be fine. But how can you really know for sure?
Well, a recent consumer report did the digging for us, and the results were interesting. So on one hand, you've got some great news. All 20 samples they tested were chemically safe. No dangerous heavy metals, no nasty plasticizers. Awesome. But look closer. 3 of them failed on really basic stuff, the labels. One had conflicting info on where it was made. Another one didn't even have the manufacturer's address, and the warning labels were so tiny you'd need a magnifying glass to read them. And that just goes to show you, safety isn't just about what's in the product, it's also about the information that comes with it. That's where the rules come in.
That whole modeling clay situation is the perfect example of why we need a real safety framework, a system that covers everything from the chemicals inside a toy to the font size on its warning label.
So, the foundation of this system, in Europe anyway, is a massive piece of legislation called REACH. And yeah, it's an acronym for the super long Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals. You can just think of it as the ultimate master rulebook for pretty much every chemical used in industry and in the stuff we buy. Now don't worry, we are not going to read the whole rulebook. We just need to zero in on one really critical part, Annex XVII. And the easiest way to think about this is as the ultimate restricted list. This is the document that's constantly being updated, telling everyone exactly which dangerous substances are banned or have strict limits in everything from toys to clothes.
So let's take a peek inside this global restricted list and see exactly how it's protecting us in our daily lives, starting with the products that matter the most.
And it just makes sense, right? A huge focus of these regulations is on protecting children. I mean, their smaller bodies are way more sensitive. And since they love to explore the world by, putting everything in their mouths, they absolutely need an extra layer of defense. Take this number, 0.1%. That's the super strict limit for a group of chemicals called phthalates, things with names like DHP and DBP. They're what's known as plasticizers, which basically means they're used to make plastics soft and flexible. The problem is, they can also mess with our hormones. So, for any toy a child could possibly put in their mouth, these chemicals can't be more than 0.1% of the material's weight. It's an incredibly precise and protective rule.
And here's another perfect example. Benzene. It's a known carcinogen, and the rule for toys is non-negotiable. The concentration cannot go over 5 milligrams per kilogram. To put that in perspective, that is just 0.0005% of the toy's weight, a level so ridiculously low it's practically zero.
But this restricted list goes way beyond the playroom. It follows us into our closets, into our kitchens, even into the garage. So let's look at the chemicals in the things we wear and use every single day.
Have you ever gotten an itchy rash from a cheap pair of earrings or maybe a watch buckle? Well, that's often a nickel allergy, and the regulations tackle this head-on. For items used in piercings, the amount of nickel that can be released is capped at a tiny 0.2 micrograms per square centimeter per week. And for other things that touch our skin for a long time, like zippers and jewelry, similar strict limits are in place. Lead is a toxin we all know to avoid, and the rules here are really thorough. In jewelry, it's limited to less than 0.05% by weight. It's also restricted in any item a child might chew on. And in paint, totally banned as an ingredient. But here's a little fun fact. There's an exception for restoring historical art and buildings. Kinda cool, right? Now this slide shows how the rules get really smart, creating different levels of protection. Take PHHS. These are a group of chemicals you find in plastic and rubber parts, like on tool handles or watch straps. For general stuff, the limit is 1 milligram per kilogram. But for toys, that limit gets cut in half. It's just another example of that extra shield for kids.
So these rules don't just restrict chemicals. Sometimes their greatest power is in getting them out of our lives completely. Let's look at a couple of big success stories. Dangerous things that were once common but are now pretty much gone from our homes, all thanks to these regulations.
Asbestos is the classic example here. But this wasn't an overnight ban. It was this careful, deliberate phase-out. Before 2005, existing asbestos was allowed to stay put. Then, in 2005, the hammer came down, a huge ban on making or selling new products with it. And today, the focus has totally shifted to safely managing and removing all that legacy asbestos from old buildings. It's a multi-decade public health victory, really.
Oh, and here's another one a lot of us will remember. The glass thermometer with that little silver line of mercury inside. It was a staple in medicine cabinets for generations. But because mercury is so toxic, these are now banned from being sold to the public in the EU. A once common object is now just a relic of a less safe time.
So this whole system works silently in the background, but it's not perfect. And that brings us to the most important part, the role that we play as consumers in our own safety.
So what can you actually do? Well, first, look for safety marks. These are the little symbols that show a product has been certified to meet the standards. Second, read the labels. And this goes right back to our modeling clay example. If the manufacturer's details are missing or the warnings are impossible to read, that's a huge red flag. And third, stay informed. Follow consumer groups and safety reports. They do all the hard work of testing so we can make smarter choices.
So this is really the key takeaway. We've got this incredibly powerful web of regulations that acts as our safety net. But our own awareness, our willingness to read a label, check for a safety mark, and just question a product that seems a little off, that will always be our first and our best line of defense.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. This massive restricted list protects us from all the dangers we know about today. Lead, asbestos, mercury. But science never stops, right? As we discover new materials and new risks, this list is going to have to keep evolving. So the question isn't just what's on the list today, but what are we going to need to add to it tomorrow?